Hi everyone, and welcome back. We are on Chapter 6, Conformity and Obedience. Let's start with conformity. This is a type of social persuasion where we voluntarily change our own behavior in order to be consistent with group standards. So here we have a cartoon where suddenly Professor Leibowitz realizes he has come to the seminar without his duck. There's one guy in the audience there who isn't holding a duck. Everybody, including the speaker, has a duck. Obviously, we're all supposed to have a duck at this conference. We look around, we see what everybody else is doing, and we choose to change our behavior in order to be consistent with the group standards. Now, a very classic, I think we could probably argue, seminal conformity study came from Sherif in 1935. He called it the autokinetic effect. Well, no, I should say he used the autokinetic effect to test the concept of conformity. So in the autokinetic effect, you sit in a dark room with a point of light in front of you that actually doesn't move. But because you're sitting there in the complete darkness with nothing except for that point of light to look at, because of your heartbeat and sort of kinesthetic cues about your body position and your head in space and other kinds of things, you can start to get the impression that the light is actually moving when it really isn't. So he took advantage of that psychological tendency, that perceptual tendency, and thought, what if we put people in the room together and had one of them be a confederate of the study and say, I saw it move, and then see if that can impact the judgments of the other actual naive participants and their sensation of movement. What he found is that the judgment of the distance that the light actually moved was affected by other people's estimates. So if they overheard other people say that it moved 1 to 5 inches, they tended to say that it moved 1 to 5 inches. The naive participants actually said something around the same. They kind of used what they overheard somebody else saying as an anchor. Ooh, throwback to an earlier chapter, right? They used that as an anchoring point to base their own judgments. So if the other person said, I think it was 1 to 5 inches, then the naive participant would give an estimate somewhere in the 1 to 5 inches range. If they overheard the other person say that it was more than 5 inches, then they tended to give an estimate that was 6 to 10 inches of distance. And so what you're seeing is definitely they were using the anchoring effect, right, where they didn't really know how far it had moved, so they used the information somebody else provided. But they were definitely going along with what other people said. Like, they may not have even perceived motion themselves, but because somebody else reported that they did, and that other person had a pretty good confidence about the distance, suddenly the naive participant saw movement also. So what Sherif concluded is that a group norm emerged through this act of conformity, right? Where the group would sort of come to an agreement without anybody having said, let's all agree. But because of our tendency to go along with what other people are doing and to base our judgments on what other people are saying and doing, we end up with this group norm. All right, now another classic conformity study came from Solomon Asch in the 1950s. He did a series of studies where he presented lines to observers. Okay, this is kind of a complicated design. So let's start with the simplest part, which is this line judgment. So on the left-hand side, you see the line, what they were calling the reference line. And then you're supposed to, as the observer, say whether that reference line on the left is the same length as line A, B, or C on the right. So it's a reasonably simple task, but you can also imagine there's opportunity for error, right? You might not be seeing it correctly. Maybe I'm seeing it from kind of an angle, those kinds of things. So people are not necessarily super confident in their judgment as they're judging these lines. But that's the task. You look at the line on the left, and then you say which of the lines on the right is the same length as. All right, so getting you set up with that, I'm going to go ahead and let you watch this video that shows you, and when I show this in class, I stop the video after the narrator says he defines the social influence versus the informational influence parts. So you may watch the whole thing and then it'll be I'll be redundant with it afterwards. So in any event, enjoy this video and I will see you on the other side.